much. I will try in 15 minutes now to answer these complicated questions and also try to contradict my previous speaker that researchers are better in research than in communication. But if you don't understand everything, you are free to contact me later on for further discussions. First of all, we have seen and heard today that there are many scientists and others that look into what could be the future energy world. How does it look like? We have taken this, a lot of international studies, and put them into our own perspective and looked at how can Norway contribute? What could Norway's role be? And we do that in Sedren together with Census, as you heard also from this morning. First of all, the background for this is, of course, we are looking for some kind of a win-win situation. We have all these fossil fuels, which has to be sooner or later closed down for giving us power, and we have to have a transition to renewables. We all know this, and it will happen in time. My question is, how can Norwegian hydropower contribute to this? At the same time, as we heard today as well, we need to have growth, economic development, and business development. So this needs to be done. Of course, we will probably see that natural gas will play an important role in the transition as an intermediate step, but in the long run, we will eventually be foreseeing a future without fossil fuels. At least they have to be clean. Okay, how do we get there? I will like you to have a look at this cartoon. It's probably a very difficult task. As you have seen now, just heard that we have reached 400 ppm of CO2 in the atmosphere. And everybody agrees that we need to do something to get rid of our oil dependence, of our dependence on fossil fuels, and turn to alternative energy. But how to do that? And to build that bridge, we hope that knowledge can be a part of that. And that's what we are in the research business to help out. And that's what you, as the future of this planet, you will have to deal with. You will have to help build that bridge. Going back to these energy scenarios again, they have one thing in common. They all, of course, point out that there will be a large portion of renewables, and to facilitate the use of them, to give everybody access to clean energy, we need to have better infrastructure, more storage, we have to manage this, and we have to be also better at forecasting what's going to happen, because many of these renewables, they will be related to the weather. Talking about storage, which I will focus on now, there has been studies suggesting that we will have a need only in Europe, maybe almost 3 times as much energy available for storage as we need in Norway alone today. And this is only for storage and balancing with these renewables that are coming in, with a large capacity. Never mind the figures, they are probably not correct, but there has been guesses about the future that suggest such figures. Large amounts of storage and balancing is needed in the future. How do we do today? How do we store electricity today? Well, we store it as pumped hydro, like the picture here shows you, from a place in Switzerland, reservoirs of water. This is the ideal storage of energy. If you raise that to a head, you will have energy stored. And other technologies are not really providing anything. There are batteries, there are compressed air, and so on, but compared to hydropower, pumped hydro, they are not contributing. To give you an idea, if you don't know how pumped hydro works, you can imagine 2 reservoirs of water connected, an upper reservoir, a lower reservoir, connected through a tunnel and with an underground pump and turbine, which looks something like this. This is how hydropower storage, pumped storage, is contributing to balance today the difference between demand and production of energy. Today, I said briefly that 140 gigawatts, which is approximately, well, in Norway's total hydropower installation for normal hydropower today is 30 gigawatts. So 140 is not really a big number compared to what little Norway is already producing. And Europe has about 45. And compared to the big figure I showed you recently, this is not enormous. The way it's used normally is like this. During nighttime, water is pumped to this upper reservoir, and during daytime you will produce water and run it through the turbines to the lower reservoir. You can ask why this is a picture taken from Germany. You can ask why does it have such a peak in the morning? Well, basically because everybody turns on the shower and wants their coffee, and the same thing when they get home from work. And in the middle of the day, you might have solar energy providing the services, so you don't need it. Why is pump storage the only technology used today? The reason is probably found in the cost. Look at this. On the right end, you have pump storage hydropower. Look also, this is a logarithmic scale, meaning that the cost range of pumped hydro compared to all other technologies that exist today. Of course, many of them will get lower cost as research goes on, but hydropower is in an order of 10, in order of magnitude, cheaper in the way of storing the energy. There are, of course, many other considerations that must come into place if you want to store your electricity somewhere, but this is one important, that up to today, this has been far the most efficient and far the cheapest. So let's have a look at how do they look like. Well, this is a picture of Germany's largest pumped storage hydropower station. You see on the upper picture, this is actually a totally artificial lake built on top of a hill to interact with this lower reservoir, and water is put back and forth here. There has been added a lot of actually pump storage hydropower the last years, and for the future there is huge numbers projected. I'm not sure if they will be 500 to 7 gigawatts worldwide. Remember, today we have 140 in 2050. This is what IEA suggests, but at least there will be a large need and large numbers of this kind of technology. Okay, let's have a look at how Norway is doing our hydropower. Norwegian hydropower is the backbone for our welfare. Norway will never have developed such industries and such welfare if we didn't start exploiting hydropower more than 100 years ago on a big industrial scale. Of course, we're not doing it like this anymore. I'm quite sure that health, safety, and environment directors of this power company would not have approved that kind of attitude. But still, this is the backbone of our welfare. And Norwegian hydropower is not at all like hydropower in the rest of Europe. We have hundreds of large reservoirs, and they are mainly made from natural lakes, which we put a dam on to have a regulation, right? Of course, there are also some artificial dams, like the one I showed you from Germany, but most are not. And there are even many pairs of reservoirs. Some are in the high mountains, and some in the intermediate heights, and some at sea level. One of them, the biggest reservoir we have today, can store almost 8 terawatt hours of energy, which is 5% or more of Norway's need. And it will take 3 years to fill this up if it was empty. Looking how can hydropower contribute in combination with the other renewables. We have especially looked at wind power, which is abundant in the northern and western Europe. And it looks like a perfect match, actually. If you look at the blue bars, its potential for wind power generation shows that it blows more in the winter than in the summer. And it's vice versa with hydropower. Because of snow and cold conditions, the inflow to hydro reservoirs are highest at this time of the year, actually. If you were here in Norway a week ago or a little bit more, there was quite heavy flooding some places because of heavy snow melt. So it looks like a perfect match on this scale. And if you look at all the Norwegian reservoirs, this is 10 years of storage level. They are almost never totally full, and they're never totally empty. It cycles throughout the year, of course. So there is storage capacity available. Let's have a little look at how in Norway. We're not doing any pumped hydro in Norway like they do in Europe, but we need indirect storage. If you follow this figure, it's from a week in October. The blue line is power generated in Norway, and the red line is what actually is the demand. So in the middle of the day, we generate more, and we export it to Denmark and to Sweden and to the Netherlands, where we have interconnectors today. And at nighttime, actually, when the demand is lower, we even produce less. because hydropower we can turn on and off more or less as we wish. Of course, there are some restrictions, especially in those plants that has an outlet directly into rivers. But this is how we do it today. We don't need actually to pump the water back, because that nature takes care of that actually. When it rains, it brings the water from sea level to the mountains. So that's okay. That's how we do it in Norway today. Have a look at future wind power production. This looks pretty messy. It's 1 year, sorry, let's zoom in. This is some months of wind power generated in the North Sea area in 2030, if all the installations that are planned or are put in place, using the wind that blew in September 2001. And you see the large variations. Even a closer look will show that they could go down from 30,000 megawatts above the average to 30,000 megawatts below the average in just less than 1 day. And then it could stay low for 1 week or 2 weeks. This is where European hydropower cannot contribute, because it will take at least 1,000 of those power plants I showed you from Germany to support that energy when there's no wind. So what can Norway do? Well, we looked at large reservoirs in southwest Norway, and we started to look at the map like this, run through some models, and started to draw new lines. These red lines could be new tunnels parallel to the existing ones, some in addition, that could produce more power and also use it for pumping water back when there's needed. This is done in reservoirs only and will not have any impact on running waters in rivers. Contradictory to what our minister told us this morning, where he talked about that this green battery of Norway could have consequences in rivers. This will not at all affect rivers, because it will be in the same rivers, in same reservoirs, as we are using today, so no outlet to rivers. And it's possible to install 20,000 megawatts of new capacity. Of course, there will be environmental impacts, as there is today of hydropower, especially in the reservoirs. You have drawdown zones, and they are filled up, these reservoirs. There are 2 pictures showing the different seasons, and this has to be carefully investigated. There will be a need for new power lines, and they will have some consequences on nature. But they will not necessarily lead to negative consequences, because this is happening in reservoirs where we already have established hydropower. So the fluctuations will be different, but it will still happen within the limits of today's regulations. We have studied this a little bit more in detail, actually combined how will reservoir levels look like in Norway. So the blue line is how a reservoir is regulated today. You see that every time at the end of the melting season, sometime in summer or early fall, all reservoirs, they are full or almost full. This is the maximum level, not every year. And they are drawn down at the end of the winter every year. And actually, the simulated, the red one, is how this will look like if we install a pumped hydro between this one and a lower reservoir. So it will follow the same pattern, but there is a lot of more variations in the scale of 3-4 meters every second day or something, or every week. It will be more variation. So this has an impact, but in general, the difference is not big. And the same in the lower reservoir. Actually, here you see the red line, which could be the future. The reservoir level is more often filled up than it is today. So those people that has a cabin next to this would have found it drawn down in 2004. With a new situation, it will be full of water. But of course, this has an impact which has to be studied. I think the major challenge is not connected to nature, but to people's image of nature. And this is a picture you might have seen before from demonstrations against a power line crossing the Hardanger fjord of Norway. Of course, there will be a need for more power lines. But is this something that actually we should contribute with or not? And the power lines might also be developed in parallel to the existing rights-of-way. So, this picture you haven't seen, but you heard a lot about it. It's how our natural gas is distributed to UK and the continental Europe today. My question is, wouldn't it be an idea also to establish a similar electricity grid for exchange? We're not the only one that is proposing this, but if we do that, we could connect the wind resources around this blue area with hydropower in Norway to back up for the rest of Europe. And this could be done without large environmental impacts. In fact, without, in some places, some positive effects, and in other places, some negative effects. They are quite small in both ways, but it's a myth that this will have large consequences for the Norwegian hydropower. And we can do this in parallel to the existing hydropower system, so our security of supply will run as today, or even make it even more secure because we have even more interconnections. So, to finalize, I'm not sure if what would of course have been a better future was to develop a wireless technology, so we don't need all these transmission lines that are connecting. But I think it will be difficult. Maybe future technology will bring that. But what is for sure, that there are many scenarios about the uncertain future. There might come rapid changes. We have seen that not long time ago in the energy business, when the Fukushima accident had led to different policies with respect from that. What is quite sure, and those hydropower reservoirs that were built, some of them more than 100 years ago, they will still be there when all of us are retired, and there will still be hydropower turbines running, and they will still have an excellent storage of potential energy like the water. They are available, and they can be used in addition to how they are used now, because we are not using them totally. But to do this, because hydropower requires large investments, we need business models and governmental agreements. If not, I don't think it will happen only by the market as it is today. So my final word is that we have a large opportunity, and I would suggest strongly that we investigate this. Thank you for your attention.